achievement, service, or dedication. Koyanas can be viewed or submitted by filling out an online Koyana form through the ASD website. One Koyana will be randomly selected from the website to be highlighted at bi-monthly board meetings. Koyana to John Wagner in IT. The Assistive Technology Department would like to send a colossal Koyana to John Wagner in IT at the ASD Ed Center. None of us can adequately express how much we appreciate his expertise, dedication, and collaborative spirit in assisting assistive technology to streamline and simplify our workflow. John's willingness to partner with assistive technology and bring his unique and applicable IT genius to our discussions has made a world of difference in our ability to bring much needed support to school teams and to the most important people in these schools, the students. Paula Briner, peer.
Thank you, and Koyana. Okay, normally our opening statement is read by our student representative. In her absence, I will do so for her. We want to welcome you to our board meeting and thank you for attending and supporting the work of the Anchorage School District and this board. The board thanks students, parents, teachers, staff, and school business partners, as well as the entire community, for your investment in our district with your time, your talent, and your tax dollars. As partners, we will respect your time and make this meeting as effective and efficient as possible. If you're unable to physically be present for the entire meeting, you may choose to tune in to the Municipality of Anchorage's Channel 9 to watch any school board meeting. Meetings are also streamed live and available on demand via the ASD website. Recordings of the meetings are available on YouTube through the agenda. To access, find the desired meeting in board docs and click the Watch Video button. Recordings are time-stamped to the agenda for easy access and closed captioned in compliance with Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act. Now, the primary purpose of the regular board meeting of the Anchorage School Board is to recognize excellence, receive reports, approve policies and contracts, as well as decide on the rules and processes followed by the board to facilitate orderly decision-making. The role is to govern, not to solve management issues. At this point, we will move to approval of the agenda. I'd like to ask the board if they would consider adding an item that was inadvertently left off, and that is our military report. Is there any objection to that revision? Okay, do we need to do official vote? I'll do a hand vote or a voice vote. No problem. Okay, and Mr. Holleman online? He has a 30-second.
I have no objection.
Okay. Okay, and has Ms. Snelling yet joined us? Okay. Okay, with that then, our agenda is approved, and we will move next to public testimony on non-action items. The board welcomes public comments on agenda items, both action and non-action, as well as in general. We value public comments as it both ensures that we remain aware of public thoughts, ideas, and concerns, and it informs our decision-making process. We have a table front and center with 2 seats and microphones available for testimony when I call your name. You have 3 minutes to testify, and you may begin speaking when the timer appears on the screen to your left and begins the countdown. When you have 30 seconds left, the number will turn yellow. When the timer reaches 0, please finish your sentence. Additionally, it's not our practice that board members answer questions or engage in discussion with members of the public. This is your time to speak and our time to listen. The board will consider all information shared by the public, and when deemed necessary, issues raised in testimony will be referred to the administration for follow-up. So we begin public testimony on non-action items. Action item testimony will be later in the agenda. And the first person I have on the agenda is Heather Probosco on immersion class sizes. Please come forward. And your time begins. Thank you.
I am here today with my youngest daughter, who is in the Russian immersion 5th grade class. Her class this year her class has 32 students. We are on an accelerated learning schedule to include Russian as a second language. My family has dedicated the last 14 years to driving our 4 children to and from the west side of town in hopes of them graduating with a highly desired skill in the 21st century. This commitment will be a 21-year relationship with the business of the Anchorage School District. Many things have changed in the Russian immersion program and even within the district. Over the last 2 years, we've seen our staff stripped down and not replaced, even though our student numbers in our program have not reflected such a drastic decrease. At my school of choice, the curriculum time limit is shortened to about 60 minutes in a day and broken up into 2 parts, one half being in Russian, the other in English. My daughter is in a class size of 32 and is expected to be able to move through a lesson in math, English, science, or social studies in 60 minutes. 60 minutes, 32 students. This issue is not new. We've dealt with this large class since kindergarten. We are facing teachers leaving our program due to large class sizes. Large class sizes is not the best practice for language immersion programs. To bring awareness to my 3 minutes of speaking, she gets 2 minutes for the 60 minutes with the 32 kids for every lesson. When my family committed to our school of choice, we never imagined a 2-decade-long ordeal. We were met with open arms from a district administration that was supportive and optimistic for a Russian immersion program, never before seen in this country. Many parents in our community have pledged their time and efforts to bring our Russian culture to our students and the district as a whole. We are committed to this program and have shown our commitment to the district with solid kindergarten registrations and families with over 20-year commitments to the program. Many of the parents that came to kindergarten orientation this year also had students that graduated with my oldest last year. After researching how to get results for our problem at our school, I realized just how many programs ASD really manages. There was over 100. I'm concerned with the support offered to existing programs and the quality of education around town. Please take the time to learn the works of what your business is. I feel that you have that going on with the restructuring of your administration, and things take a long time to just actually happen. Nothing happens fast, just the quality of my daughter's education may be slipping away. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Спасибо.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next, and I would ask the audience to please use this as a sign of approval, but for the decorum of the meeting, not to clap or cheer. Next, we have Abby Belts and Angela Armstrong. If you would like to come up and be in the second seat, we'll be ready to hear you right after Abby.
Am I good? Okay. Good evening, board members and Dr. Bishop. My name is Abby Belts. I'm a special education teacher working at Mears Middle School. For 12 years, I've proudly served students who experience cognitive impairment. I'm a quality educator. In my last evaluation, I received 8 areas that were deemed exceptional, which is pretty good using the Danielson model. I am here today to shed light on a major problem this district will face that the current contract offer only intensifies. This district will have difficulty retaining quality educators as our senior staff continues to retire. Let me explain using my own situation. I was hired in August 2006. I was hired 14 days behind the deadline to qualify for Tier 2 retirement, which would have ensured me a pension plan and health care upon retiring. Instead, my plan is a 401k style benefit, which I am completely vested in. The district contributes 7% and I contribute 8% each paycheck. While this sounds like a good system, it really is failing me. You see, the state of Alaska restricts the investment portfolios my money can be distributed into. My last check into my retirement plan estimated me retiring at 67, having an annual income of $18,000. Yes, you heard me correctly, $18,000. Please keep in mind, I am not eligible for Social Security benefits to supplement this income. So to put it frankly, I cannot afford to stay in education if the only retirement plan I have in place is the 403B. I need to put private money aside and invest wisely for myself. The district's current contract proposal of 0% increase for 3 years will actually have me bringing home less money in 3 years. This is a systematic problem. Half of the teaching force of ASD is Tier 3 teachers. Tier 1 and Tier 2 employees are already retiring and continue to retire. Who's going to fill those positions? And how long are those educators going to stay for a non-competitive wage? At this moment, there's 14 special education jobs unfilled in this district. The district struggles to recruit special education teachers, often bringing teachers in from out of state and offering a $5,000 signing bonus. After 5 years of their Alaskan adventure, I've watched many of those teachers pick up and leave the state with your signing bonus and your 7%. With the rate of autism increasing from 1 in every 8 children to 1 in 68 children, the need for special education teachers will only continue to rise. Quality and experienced special education teachers are the district's first defense in avoiding costly litigation. Frankly, quality and experienced teacher in every curriculum are the first step to providing the high quality education you encourage us to in our email Friday, Dr. Bishop. So in conclusion, this district has a responsibility to hire and retain quality educators. The contract being offered by the school district will not entice new employees nor retain current employees. Many seasoned educators such as myself are making plans for new careers. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Angela, and would Aaron Sullivan please approach the dais? Ms. Armstrong. There it goes.
Dr. Bishop, board members, and fellow teachers, my name is Angela Armstrong, and I have been an active participant in the Anchorage School District for the last 33 years, both as a student and a teacher. I'm currently in my 21st year of teaching at Chugach High School. Last week marked the end of the first quarter. In recognition of our work, we received a letter from you, Dr. Bishop, praising and commending us for the progress made toward reaching the district's goal. In your email, you stated, teachers, support staff, and administrators have worked collectively to research and vet new curriculum, different schedules, upgrades in support software, and the like. The rollout of our best practice efforts have been quick. After watching the last few weeks of testimony, the statement rings a bit false. Quick is not necessarily what is best. The new curriculum was not delivered in an effective manner or with teacher training. The scheduling was not staff supported, and the new programs and software were not thoroughly vetted or tested for glitches. Not to mention, all of these decisions were done often at the sacrifice of the teaching staff and students. You, Dr. Bishop, and the school board chose the new curriculum. How many hundreds of thousands of dollars did you spend on that curriculum? You chose to change the schedules to give teachers a greater number of classes as well as larger class sizes, all at the sacrifice of students and teachers. You chose the new software, and again, I ask, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars did this cost? Dare I mention the millions of dollars spent on a series of testing programs hastily and unsuccessfully implemented in the district? $12 million for the AMP test, which had too many faults really to even talk about right now. And possibly the hundreds of thousands or millions that we're spending on the PEAKS test. How many millions did you choose to spend on stuff instead of people? When you did decide to spend money on people, you gave the 10% to 16% raise to your district administrative staff because you, quote, had to increase pay for certain leadership jobs as you could recruit and retain the right people for your team. Am I not part of your team? Are all of these dedicated educators behind me not part of your team? Do you not want to retain me, retain us? Do you not want to retain the young, energetic teachers who bring new and fresh ideas to the classroom? Because there's no financial reason for them to stay. Without the security of a retirement package and competitive pay, why should they stay? Without the innovative ideas of our young teachers, we will not meet our goals. Teachers are on the front line. We make the difference and we make the student experience worthwhile and valuable. We help with the scraped knees and the bruised egos. We know when the kids are having problems. We help guide them through that confusing and sometimes dangerous maze of school. We buy supplies for kids, food, pencils. They talk to us, they rely on us, not necessarily you. We are the team members you need to be worried about retaining. Yet, you won't even entertain a 3% raise at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Again, thank you for those who are showing decorum. Aaron Sullivan and Thomas Pease, would you please come forward? You may begin.
Thank you to those who showed up in support tonight, and thank you to those who are required to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. The biggest impact on the success of students is teacher retention. I have worked in ASD for the past 6 years, 5 of these as a teacher at Chugiak High School. When I first signed my contract, I was very well aware that as a Tier 3 teacher, I would not be receiving a retirement. If you look around this room, the majority testifying and showing support are those who have a vested interest. They are not Tier 3 teachers. What does this say to you? If it's not apparent, I'll do what I do best. I'll teach you. As a Tier 3 teacher, why would I ever consider staying in a district that doesn't support its teachers? Why would I stay in a district that continually dumps programs and expectations without proper training or support? Why would I stay in a district that throws millions of dollars around willy-nilly with no proof of effectiveness? Why would I stay in a district that considers a 0% raise increase the best offer they can give me for the next 3 years without an actual retirement? I'll tell you why I stay. I stay because of my colleagues. All of these men and women sitting behind me and the hundreds at home working their tails off each day and night are the reasons I stay. And I am not the only Tier 3 teacher to experience this. At my school alone, we have several teachers who have felt the effect of how you have chosen to spend the district's budget. During last year's budget cut, 7 teachers at Chugiak alone were pink slipped. Even with getting some back at the start of this year, they were not returned to full status, and because of this, their health care coverage suffered, and as well as financial support in their homes. When in your email, Dr. Bishop, you stated, our mission, educating all students for success in life, is that big target before us in each decision made, each program launched, and each initiative implemented. I feel that that has failed. A majority of research shows that teachers are the most important factor in the classroom, followed closely by contact time with students. Explain to me how the decision to buy stuff instead of investing in your veteran and new teachers achieves that mission. Explain how offering a non-competitive wage to retain the quality teachers you have achieves that mission. Explain how increasing class sizes is the way to accomplish the district's mission. How is this, in your words, Dr. Bishop, educating all students for success in life? I would like to reiterate that I stay because every student should and deserves to be provided with a strong and effective educator. I stay because I want to show my students that education is important. If you cannot support your teachers, what does that say to our students? What does that say to our parents and our community? You're essentially saying that education isn't important and not worth supporting, and that's wrong. In this district, I am tenured, and if you believe that the salary increase from the step and lane changes are enough to keep me here, you are sadly mistaken. If you think that your $500 bonus suggested in your proposed contract is an incentive, you're incorrect. It's actually an insult. Tam Agosti-Gisler and Andy Holleman, you were teachers. Dr. Bishop, you were a teacher. What has changed? Why are you forgetting where you came from? You know what this job entails. You know the hundreds of hours put into planning, teaching, and being a soundboard for kids. So why is what we are being offered okay with you? Why, with the way this district is headed, you are going to lose good teachers. You will lose someone like me, and you will then be doing a disservice to all of the students, past, present, and future. Why am I being reduced to a number? Why don't I matter to you? Every day my students leave and I tell them to make good choices. So I'm going to tell you the same thing. Please make a good choice, do what you know is right, and take care of your teachers.
Thank you for your testimony. Thomas Pease.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Pease and I teach in the Anchorage School District. I'm here to share a few of the changes I've observed over my time in the district and to provide some perspective as on on our as-yet unachieved teacher contract. First, some recent changes. I've watched standardized testing expand from 2 days to 8 days each year, with a total of 11 to 12 days needed to accommodate all students. I've watched counselors relegated to test administrators. I've seen libraries closed for weeks at a time as testing sites. I've seen banks of computer carts reserved for testing and unavailable for class use, again, for weeks at a time. At middle school, we've moved from the team model and blocking to a 7-period day, and then back again to blocking with an 8-period day, but only on certain days, with an ill-defined advisory period thrown in. On Thursday of last week, I regrettably said goodbye to all but 4 of my students in my 4th and 5th hour classes. All were surprised, including me. A couple were in tears. They received new schedules with a half a day's advance notice. These students now attend different classes as part of another change, the newly adopted MTSS curriculum. In fact, I'm told roughly 200 students, or 1/4 of our student body, receive new schedules, and that these changes could occur every quarter. Most of these students are in mixed grade level classes and attend classes on 3 different teams. Some also attend lunch outside their own grade level lunch. The new language arts and math placement systems have, in effect, dismantled the middle school team model. Without acknowledging it, we've reverted to the junior high model that I experienced as a student in this district over 40 years ago. We need to be honest with parents on this point. Middle school, as currently being taught, is no longer middle school. Today, at the start of my 10th week of school, I began learning names of a classroom full of new students. The new MTSS language arts curriculum has been adopted to address individual students' learning needs. In theory, it should work. In practice, it remains to be seen. I worry that such frequent student movement based on a single test score could unwittingly create a transient student population within a school building. Making frequent class changes to fill existing learning holes could unintentionally produce new learning holes. For better or for worse, in its quest for excellence, education appears to be in a state of perpetual change. So looking back on these and many other changes begs the question, what, if anything, remains consistent in a student's career? The answer is educators. Those who work face-to-face with students on a daily basis provide consistency and stability in an otherwise chaotic day. But this one constant in a student's education appears threatened. We all know the national statistic that nearly 50% of all teachers leave the profession in the first 5 years, and we also know that about the same percentage of educators currently employed in the Anchorage School District enter the profession within the past 5 years. This points to significant teacher turnover. We need to retain bright, committed educators. Given a competitive contract, we can slow teacher turnover rates. We can retain quality educators and reduce the approximately $20,000 it costs to hire and train each new teacher. Clearly, we work in a profession that's undervalued. We all know it. We're all public servants here. That's why to threaten ASD educators with a salary freeze is so hurtful. Pay freezes are damaging because their effects are cumulative. Pay freezes undermine earnings over an entire career. How could ASD possibly attract quality educators or retain educators they have if they impose a 3-year freeze? We're undervalued, but we're not gullible. A thank you note in our mailbox doesn't pay the bills. Those of us who've experienced pay freezes in the past won't return to the dark ages. And newly hired educators won't support a pay freeze either. New hires have neither a retirement pension nor access to Social Security. All that
And I'm
remains,
going to ask you to conclude because we're about a minute over.
okay, all that remains is salary and benefits, and that's why all of us are here tonight. That's why none of us can support the district's current proposal. We care about our students, we care about our work environment, and we care about our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Okay, at this point, that concludes the speakers who've signed up to be heard on non-action items. There will be another segment in our agenda towards the end of the meeting for anyone who cares to also sign up to speak on non-agenda items. Yes, ma'am? Come on up, and please state your name for the record.
My name is Kristen Newcomer. Good evening.
Thank you.
This is my 12th year as a teacher with the Anchorage School District. My dad planted a row of apple trees a few years ago. Last year, a few trees produced 1 apple each. This year, the trees have a few apples each. With time, care, and patience, the apple trees will flourish and provide ample fruit for friends and family. In the meantime, my dad tends the trees. As a culture, we're not comfortable with in the meantime. We want fruit and we wanted it yesterday. Destination 2020 is fast approaching and I can feel the stress in the air for some ripe fruit. When it comes to apple trees, however, my dad doesn't focus on the fruit. He focuses on caring for the tree. Likewise, we should not be as focused on Destination 2020 as we are on the conditions to produce it. There are 2 crucial components in creating the right conditions for Destination 2020, time and connections. Time. Fruit-bearing trees take time to produce. Goal 1 of Destination 2020 is 90% proficiency in language arts and math. To reach this, we need to invest time in learning the new curriculum and time in teaching skills to proficiency. Rich new curriculums were rolled out this year, yet there was not much time for teachers to learn about it before the school year began. Making excuses for and glossing over this mistake is short-sighted. If nothing is done to correct it, the ramifications will be long-lasting, great programs never fully implemented. Our curriculum, Go Math, moves quickly through complex skills, allotting 1 day per lesson before moving on to a new skill the next day. As I press for help, I'm continually told that we must teach to the Common Core. Yes, but we must also allow for flexibility within Go Math and the Common Core according to the needs of our students. Peter M. Singh, author of The Fifth Discipline, a text read in one of the ASD leadership classes, says, faster is slower. Virtually all natural systems, from ecosystems to animals to organizations, have intrinsically optimal rates of growth. The optimal rate is far less than the fastest possible growth. We might need to take a step back and reorient ourselves to this truth. Connections. An apple tree will die without having its roots connected to the ground. To reach the 2020 goals of graduation and attendance, we need to make connection a priority. Students will check out, drop out, and sell out if they don't feel connected. A study on class size found students behave better and participate more often when they can't hide in the back of a classroom. The Harvard study of adult development found that quality connections are the strongest indicator of a happy, healthy life. Consolidating schools and large class sizes might save money, but do they foster connection and community? Only if students have a sense of belonging within their community, school, and classrooms will they be rooted for success. My dad didn't plant apple trees so much for himself as he did for his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. We can learn a lot from apple trees. We have the opportunity to create better conditions for not only our present students, but for generations to come. Using time to our advantage and nurturing lasting connections is a good starting place for a sweet harvest.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
testimony. Okay, and as I mentioned, there will be a second opportunity for non-action item testimony later in the agenda. We're now moving to our reports, and we will begin with our military report. Colonel Knight.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Bishop, and school board members. First off, I'd like to kick off with, we have roughly 2,500 folks that have successfully deployed to Afghanistan, and so the 425 Airborne Brigade Combat Team is in place and operations are starting. With that, the family members that are back are taking care of business, and appreciate the school district's support for that. We've embedded, as you know, 8 military family life consultants in the schools through 17 schools, and the staff at the schools, empowering them to get at some of those students has been extremely successful. We had a meeting last week, and so I want to appreciate the school district for that support. That's extremely important. We'll be looking at additional employments both on the Army side and the Air Force side through the fall into the winter. So we'll keep the school board abreast of those as they happen. As you said, I appreciated your safety moments. We make people wear reflective belts, and what we have to tell our service members is this reflective belt will not prevent cars from running into you, and so the importance of keeping eyes up is really important. With that inclement weather, we'll continue to work with the school district. We appreciate the partnership. I don't necessarily look forward to talking to Tom Rath at 5 o'clock in the morning, but the sensors that you provide and the input is really critical, and so we'll look forward to working together, and maybe that'll come upon us sooner, not later. And with that, we're also committed to some of the base access issues that have come up with the Muldoon, and working together to get school buses potentially through the base if that gets shut down again unexpectedly. So had a meeting with the installation principals with the schools that are on the installation. Good meeting. One of the issues that came up was some base access for short notice substitutes, some of those kind of things. I just want to note that we're working on that. I think we've met with the staff here and with my staff, and I think we've resolved some of the disconnects, and so we are much more efficient with being able to be responsive to getting substitutes on the installation to take care of teaching at a short notice. So that's fairly positive. And then the last thing I'd just like to report on as we go to the first marking period, we did do a redistrict on the installation. I think the school board approved that. That's been really quiet, and so quiet is successful. And so it's been pretty smooth, especially with some of the other things that are going on the installation. So I appreciate the way we implemented that last year, which was pretty effective. So, pending your questions.
Are there any questions for board members? Dr. Bishop? Thank you very much for your report.
Thank you, Colonel Knight.
We move to the superintendent update. Dr. Bishop.
Thank you, Madam President. There were several requests from the board for updated information, and I will start with the first one, which was an update on the bus barn. And just following this, I guess connecting the dots and following the timeline, we were requested, it was last spring. It was last spring, correct? Last spring, we began this process whereby the city was looking into the area for which our bus barn was located for a development. And we were requested to join the table. We had a seat at the table, but couldn't eat, actually. I didn't really have input until that assembly meeting when they passed the ordinance to do a fast move forward on this. We were then asked questions by an assembly member, which actually got that out into the open, joined the table. Since then, had concerns about the area for which the assembly moved the bus barn from approximately, I believe, 8 acres to 3, removed 5 acres from that, that it would be difficult to maneuver those buses and whatnot. Since then, the city had an alternate route, which also didn't come to fruition, which was out by the movie theater, the Muldoon movie theater. And hence, that stopped just dead in its tracks. So with the community input. And in that process, I believe the city did work to have this be a school district issue when essentially it certainly was not. If given our choice, we would like to just stay where we are. We did share at that assembly meeting that people don't like bus barns, that buses start up very early. There's a state law that says they have to be at 45 degrees by the time they pick up the first student. So when it's 0 degrees, our bus drivers are, the folks at the bus barn are starting them 45 to an hour early. And they make noise, they have backup lights, all that stuff. So we shared that. But where are we presently now that that's all happened and we're at a standstill? We had a terrible taste in our mouths from the manner in which the city handled it. We've shared with them that we have to sustain our student transportation mission. We've been very clear about that. We move approximately 28,000 students, actually about 27,000 students every day, twice a day. So with that, in the nation, we are the 81st largest busing system in the entire nation. And so we move a lot of people. We support their efforts, and we've shared that for economic development. We don't want to stand in the way. However, we want to find a suitable and acceptable location for a new transportation facility with the expectation that the process is thorough and transparent this time. It certainly was fast-tracked, and honestly what was said was that you guys were right there, but we never had a meeting with the developers. We were able to listen to them, but not to have that meeting till that assembly meeting changed that. And then also no additional financial cost to the district. As you recall, when they wanted to move us on site just to another area, they wanted to charge us $500,000 in rent. For a new place that we pay no rent right now. So we have stuck to this in our meetings presently with them. They are continuing to meet, but we say, you know what, we need to keep our mission for transporting students at no cost, and we welcome to work with you. So those are kind of our three items. And in that, I know the board president may or may not or want to make a statement. I don't know when the time is publicly, because certainly we would not want again for the same mishaps to have happened. I believe that it was not a fair process and not a fair assessment in which they portrayed that the district actually wanted to go anywhere. Really, we just want to stay where we are.
So yes, I would like to make the statement. The ASD Board is supportive of the municipality's efforts to spur economic development in Anchorage. Nevertheless, the district has an obligation to sustain its student transportation mission and is prepared to continue working with the city administration in a complete, thorough, and transparent public process to find a suitable and acceptable location for a new transportation facility. We stand firm that the district should not bear any financial cost associated with a potential relocation of the student transportation facility due to the municipality's decision to develop on that land in which our facility presently resides. Thank you.
All right, so we are made a public statement about this. Hopefully that as we move forward, we can continue to share that information with the city. I know that there have been 2 new places. Already the community councils are aware of those and beginning the process to discuss them. One is by Campbell Airstrip, I believe, out in that area, neck of the woods, and I wasn't sure where the other one is. But we might be back in the same boat, if you will. So we don't want to feel like we're impeding the work of the city, but certainly it's going to have to be a win-win, we believe. And we could leave it open if that's, we can answer questions as well from the board if there's additional questions.
Mr. Donley.
Well, this whole thing was it was really sprung on us, and I really am concerned that I didn't even know about the Campbell Airstrip. Nobody had told me about that yet. If there's other locations that they're considering, I would love a report about where those locations are.
Dr. Bishop, you want to respond to that?
And actually, we found out about those from people who live in that area, employees that live in that area, that received the notice.
Ms. Marsett.
I'm going to go on the record, and I'm just going to say this, that I've been approached by an assembly member that possibly we might be asked to pay for the move of our bus barn through the sale of a piece of land we own, and I want to go on the record that that has been asked of me.
Ms. Plunkett.
That may have been asked about from you, but that was actually mentioned in an interview on one of the 2 TV channels, probably by the same member.
And I'll add, that statement was also made at a community council meeting at which I was present. Mr. Donley?
So what's going on here? Why? I mean, last time I went to a budget advisory meeting down at City Hall, and somebody implied there was this plan to move the bus barn. I hadn't received any notice of it. I didn't know about it. I'm a new member, of course. And then it was kind of hush hush, don't talk about it. And then all of a sudden, somebody said you should stick around for the next meeting, which, I'm a member of the budget advisory, so I was there for that. So I stick around for the next meeting, and then all of a sudden I find out all this information that they've got a plan to move our bus barn. And that they'd already kind of picked a spot for it. And some of the assembly members were very reasonable about it, saying, well, we're going to need to talk to the school board about it, How far are we going down this road before we get input and notice about what's going on? It sounds like last time all over again.
I would agree. And so the administration is meeting on a regular basis. Is that my
I believe they have some meetings coming up, and we're going to be present. And the statement for which the board made is what we will continue to share. We did not, they used some, is it chapter 21 or some, what was it?
That's correct, Dr. Bishop.
Chapter 21, it was kind of a fast tracking through ordinances. And we basically saw that coming to go with how they, I guess, do it in an RFP or something. So we've shared that, we were being good partners with them, and okay, if we can, basically, we need to transport our kids and we need to have it not cost any money. But we are fully at the table now when they start to discuss. We have not heard the new plan of what the new plan is. We did not hear that they want to, they're not talking to us directly about buying the land and things like that. It is coming through just different individuals that happen to be at meetings.
And again, in fairness, the assembly as a whole has not voted on this, so this may be individual members stating their own personal preferences. I will say, though, that I'm hoping that the way this discussion kicked off, where I found out about it 24 hours before the assembly meeting on June 27th, that we have much more prior notice, particularly because we have quarterly board meetings with the assembly, and we had just had a meeting with them, and they didn't even put it on the agenda, not a few days before the actual vote. So I'm hoping that we can clear up these communication difficulties and have wide open and transparent communication as we proceed forward. Yes, Ms. Marsett.
I'd like to volunteer as a board member to go to those meetings so that we have a board present at a board member present at all of those meetings with the assembly and the muni. I think that would help.
Okay. And I will have Tom Roth notify you and go with the team. Krista Phillips presently, I believe, is our rep.
Thank you very much. And so I will officially appoint you. Okay. Next item.
Yes, the next request was last meeting in regard to funding and really staffing at our schools. And I wanted to share funding and how it's connected to student enrollment and class size and staffing. At the end of the meeting last week, we had a discussion in regard to some testimony about large class sizes. So presenting this, just to share with funding that it is based on student enrollment, and there's a 20-day count period, so it's not attendance, it's actually enrollment during this 20-day period in October, so it passed. And while we count students who come to our school, the state actually counts full-time equivalents. So 2 students taking 2 classes a day, if they're just part-time, would equal 1 student. A full-time student is 4 classes or 4 courses. A part-time student is 2 classes. So when you count FTE and student enrollment, it's very, very different at the state level. Sometimes we think of enrollment of how many people cross our door. It actually, for funding reasons, it's full-time equivalents. And 4 is full-time, not 8 in a middle school, or there's probably 10 subjects in elementary and 6 in high school. So it is down 600 students from last year. We had predicted to be around 270 students less already. And as a result of the shortage, there'll be a reduction in the BSA funding from the state that will make up elsewhere, because we did plan for staffing at our schools, whether it's security guards, principals, teachers, everybody who staffs our school was based off of our original enrollment number. The CFO office is projecting the reduction in enrollment to be about between $3 and $3.5 million, and it will come from staffing and service level reductions to remain the balance. So at the October 23rd board meeting, we'll present that. November 9th. Yeah, we'll present it. We'll share some ideas here and present at the next meeting. How is it that we have a million in cuts? And generally, a mean salary can range from, with benefits, from 60,000, 60 grand upwards. High school principal, 120. Those are the majority of, and teachers anywhere in that scenario. So the mean average salary in our district is about $100,000. So we look at people in that way. We mentioned the benefits costing, and teacher benefits actually is a lot less than TAs. So the TA cost is in the benefits, and at the state level, I think for classified, it's about 22%, and about 12.5% for certificated people, whether they are nurses, principals, administration, teachers. So when we look at FTE, again, it's not straight a certain position. It's literally, we just talk about FTE. And why? It's because 89% of our budget is people. So we look at when we are affected by reductions at the state level, we are basically people. So what we're doing right now is implementing so that we would not have to lay anyone off in the middle of the year. We're looking at a 2-week hiring delay. And if this operates throughout the year, it would be able to put $1.5 to $2 million back into the system to pay for the overstaffing that we are presently experiencing. We're also modifying custodial hours. We did this year with the custodial contract that perhaps may be ratified and approved tonight with the energy cost savings of $300,000. Now this does change the way we do business. It has schools closing sooner, especially elementary schools, closing sooner than they were used by the community. But that will be able to save $300,000. Also, we're reviewing additional measures. There was capital money that we believe that we could bring back into an operational side of the house, and additional funds are available through debt service fund due to additional savings and a refund in July. So we're looking at all different areas. At this point in time, if we had no savings or no way to make up the funds, it would not come from contracted employees, because contracted employees are from year to year under contract. It would literally happen on one side of our house, which is the classified or non-certificated employees. That's how that happened. That's in the middle of the year when you're short. Now we do have some savings. The board already put $4 million to savings to not have more than a reduction than, I believe, last year than we had in attrition. So we reduced, but our attrition was greater than our reduction. So we actually, if folks wanted to work for us, we brought them all back. So this is actually where we are. So when we think about staffing and budgets, it really is on enrollment. And so I just wanted to start with that. We do have presently a conundrum where we actually predicted 270 less using our demographics. I believe it's Northern Economics assisted us in making those predictions, yet we are 350 additional kids not here. So,
Mr. Donley.
I just saw a news report that the Kenai School District had over 100 student population shortfall. So if you were to extrapolate, our experts actually predicted better than their experts by significant margin. So it's probably caught all the economists and the demographic analysis, people who do demographic analysis off guard.
Madam President, actually to Member Donley, you're correct. Kenai was over 100 down as well as Matsu under prediction. So we're 350 additional, so that's correct. And Kenai is about 8,500 and we're well above that. So in percentage wise, yes.
Ms.
it probably
Plunkett, did you have a comment?
I did, but I could wait if there's a little bit more you have to say about the funding dollars.
Sure. And we're people. School districts are people. We work with kids and we are people. We're a service organization, and that's why this is difficult. I was just going to share. Additionally, what we look at is monies that we can take outside of people, which are the 2-week delay. We don't have folks on board yet. We're not doing any kind of furlough. We're just holding that up to create those funds to cover our salaries, modified custodial hours again, and non-personnel funds to be able to move over to the operational side for personnel. So that is what we're working on now, and if there's any questions, we'll bring back specifics to the board about exactly with memos in regard to transferring money and the like with a plan, and then the board can approve that.
Ms. Plunkett.
So you're looking at a mix in terms of what you went over of both what I would call capital dollars versus O&M type dollars. But with the debt service fund, I'm not sure that we can pull those dollars.
Well, the board, or the state rather, had underfunded us. And so in July, we did receive funds from the state, and we had already paid our bills using all of our funds. So this is we can pull this money back since we used other money to pay it.
And we don't have that dollar amount yet.
I believe $1.7 million.
I want to give an opportunity for either Ms. Snelling or Mr. Holleman online to ask a question.
I've got none right now, thank you.
Okay, and Ms. Snelling, do you have any questions? Here, none. Ms. Marsett.
I don't believe we've seen, I think our enrollment's going to drop more, honestly, given that we're in a recession right now. As many as you know, I'm a realtor, and we look at different housing facts. Our rental vacancy has always been about 2%. If you drive around town, you'll see a lot of for rent signs right now. So it's going to about 7 to 10% right now. That's always a good indication that people are leaving the state. And I do believe that we are going to see more leaving the state, and that we are going to see fewer numbers in our school. So I don't think this is the end of it. I think we have to be prepared for that.
And I know that there was a gasp in the audience when I talked about what can we do about reductions. We are trying to, how much an FTE costs, how much we receive for an FTE as a student, how much we pay for full-time equivalent in staffing. We operate almost 90% of our funds, $520 million, is people. And so it is hard to not affect people when, whether it's higher class size, not having people here, affecting kids, when we are short. So as you know, the state came in with flat funding this year. Natural increases to our operating system was about 12 million plus 3 million extra in transportation. So that's where we are with flat funding.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Donley.
just for the record, how many years of flat funding have there been now?
We were given money outside of the BSA. Yeah, so BSA has been flat funded, but we were given funds outside the BSA, but it was never included for safety, things like
And
that.
that was 2011.
Okay. So we've actually been in the situation of absorbing inflation by the time you got to this point in time for almost 6 years.
I can speak to that. In our time on the board, when we did not have the funds we needed in our operating budget, that's where we instituted the cuts in as many places as we could outside of the classroom. And that's where the reduction, since I've been on the board, of 25% in the administration has come from.
And Madam Chair, could I continue?
Yes.
And just to kind of tie this into some of the testimony about class size, that's what's driving the class size now. Is my understanding is this series of zero increase years, the school district's been forced to absorb that, and that's resulted in higher class sizes. It's just a function of economics, of not getting any additional money from the state to offset the increased cost of doing business.
And then this year, there was an error or unforeseen decrease in enrollment. So we believed we would be 270 less. We planned for 270 less. That was part of the reduction in staffing already. Well, we're more, so.
Close to 600 is what I'm hearing.
600 less. So in that same conversation, the board did talk about staffing levels. So now that we understand this is how funding occurs, the staffing levels, and there's a chart in regard to the evidence-based model that we've shared, that what would it be to get to the evidence-based model in research? And we're using the Picus-Odin again because that's the best research that we had. So here are the current staffing levels in ASD, what the evidence-based model calls for, what the delta is, and then what would that additional cost. Again, for easy math, we used $100,000 for all different kinds of categories. So for core elementary teachers, you can see we have 969. Evidence-based model, if we were to reach that for classroom size in the evidence-based model, we would need 340 more core elementary teachers. That isn't even the elective, so electives is even added onto that. So at the elementary level, it would almost be $44 million toward the evidence-based model. Core secondary teachers, you can see very similarly, but not as grand of a difference. Elective teachers, very similar. The biggest difference is in our elementary schools, and again, it's 15 million. So total just classroom teachers would be 59. If we went to the non-instructional pieces that they're calling for, and these are also based on 100,000. Some of them that are similar, like noon duty, we tried to use the average salary there, but gifted and talented are based off of 100 grand, whether they're administrator or teacher, just to balance that out. So instructional coaches, there's asterisk there. We don't take instructional coaching from the operations that we get from the state. In an effort to support the implementation of the new English Language Arts curriculum, we use grant funds to be able to bring support in. Now, the grants that we were able to use are non-instructional grants, so they're for professional development to support teachers, but they can't be direct classroom teachers according to the funds. So the 48 instructional coaches supported our elementary schools teachers in instruction with the English Language Arts, which I just want to add was selected by a group of about 60 teachers. They went through the process here for about 4 months and selected that curriculum. The tutors, of course, you can go on. Guidance counselors, we should have 41 more across the district. Extra duty funds and student activities was even a cost in the Picus-Odin. So if you took all of those recommendations, we're quite in the hole. If you take the 49.5 for non-instructional, non-classroom, as well as classroom, you're looking at 109 million. So I believe that was someone had mentioned, what would it cost to get to those numbers that we want? That, if you costed it out according to what our mean salary is, which we have no other way to do it, that's what we figured on. So it could be a little less or a little more depending on the positions and the experience of the teachers and the staff.
So to clarify, to reach the evidence-based model done by the Picus Odin Research Group, we would need about $109 million added on to our current funding, which doesn't even include the inflationary costs on our energy and medical costs, which aren't currently included.
Correct. And to make a statement, we based the salaries on $100,000. Teachers, instructional coaches, guidance counselors, they do not take home $100,000, and that's a misconception, I know, at the state level. The benefits and the price for the cost of retirement is quite high. So that is, when we say we based off 100 grand, it's not 100 grand in someone's pocket. It's just the mean of the total cost of the position.
Mr. Donley?
I just want to reiterate the point I made earlier. This projection of 350 fewer students than was budgeted for is, the actual projection was twice as good. I just did some calculating here as our school districts to the north and south of us did. So why it's unfortunate and it's bad, it's half as bad as what happened to the south and to the north.
Right, absolutely.
Nonetheless, it's still a deficit we have to deal with. Ms. Marsett?
And I'm just going to bring this up because I think it's important when we look at things like this that we have to remember that we are advocating for our children and our teachers, and that when we go to Juneau, we can't say no more cuts. We need to ask for the money. We need to ask for the money that we so desperately need to be able to educate our children and to be able to keep the teachers that we have. And I'd love nothing more than to give everybody a raise. But, you know, we go to bed at night and we have these numbers in our head, and it's really hard. It's really hard.
On that point, on the most recent draft of our communications, our legislative priorities, we're really trying to emphasize that and make the case for what a series of flat funding years has resulted in. So we are working on it.
Mr. Donley, would you also like to speak to a couple of the other points that we're putting on those priorities beyond the flat funding?
Sure. In addition to the BSA and trying to set it out in a, I'm speaking as communications chair, by the way, for the public, because my committee's been tasked with drafting these, and I really appreciate the input of the president on this. You've been great helping to draft that with your experience. We're really trying to explain what the impact has been in a series of flat funding years to terms that are more relatable than just a giant bureaucracy, and that's basically class size, the impact on class size, and so in addition to that advocacy for some additional funds there, and not just another flat year because of the serious circumstances we're in now, we're also asking for tweaks to the foundation formula. The foundation formula, I call it that's what legislators used to call it. I don't know what we call it now. Yeah, the BSA or the formula by which the state determines funding for school districts all over the state. And there's two major things we're asking for. These are not new ideas, but number one is a hold harmless for seeking economies that otherwise you'd be penalized under the existing formula. The formula is quite an extensive equation, actually, if you think about it. And one of the factors in that equation is school size. And right now, if we try to attempt savings through school size adaptation, we lose more money than we gain. And so the formula was never intended to have that kind of result. So we're asking for be held harmless from those kind of savings efforts. It's very rational, I think. But in fact, there is legislation there is one proposal before the legislature right now, not to do just the opposite of that, to cut schools districts off entirely from funding if they don't consolidate more. So it's that's pretty frightening. Another really important element is the school cost differential. That's another element of this very complex equation that determines funding levels, where there's a study has been performed, typically on a once every decade, about the actual cost of running a school in certain geographical areas of Alaska. And it creates a factor, and that multiplies the funding by that factor that individual districts get. Historically, Anchorage was the least expensive place to do business in the state, and so we were the bottom of the list, and everybody else got something more than us. A 2015 ICER study, Institute of Social Economic Research, on teaching costs indicates we are no longer the least expensive place to do business, but we are continuing to be penalized by an out-of-date cost differential factor, and that could be a very significant amount of money, and we're seeking to try to get that updated so that it's an objective standard done by the experts at ICES. And ICER, yeah. Sorry.
No, ISIS.
I've been watching too much news, I guess. Yeah, ICER, yeah. So, and that could make a significant difference to our funding levels through the state formula also.
Ms.
I want
Marsett.
to say one more thing. I am very cautious about recommending a change or having them look at the BSA, and I only say that because there are certain people in Juneau that would love to open that up and possibly make a change that would not be in our favor. And so I do caution, I think we really need to take a look at that very closely, because I think that could bite us in the butt.
Response from Mr. Donley?
Well, I'm not exactly clear on what you mean by the BSA. The base student allocation, we should be advocating for an increase in that.
I realize that, but when you do that, you're opening up that formula for them to tweak it. They can tweak it any way they want to once you open it up. It doesn't necessarily have to be in our favor.
But it's hard to have it both ways, where if we're asking them to modify it to adjust the actual BSA, which is a dollar amount that appears in the statute, you're going to be tweaking.
And for clarification, in terms of the cost basis differential, that's not changing the formula. That's just changing the information that informs which is the base, and Anchorage is the base, and yet we don't have the lowest cost of living now in the state of Alaska. So that's not changing the formula. That's just looking at the base. Ms. Plunkett.
You would not start out with changing the BSA next year. The first start, which has been said multiple times, is getting the ICER study, which could take a year to 2 years. So it's not something you're just going to snap your fingers and make a change on. But when you're looking at it direction-wise, you have to start with the study before you can move forward. And that was my understanding. While our goal is to increase and to change the district cost factor, you have to start with the study, which is a couple-year process. So it's not something that you're going to have a danger of having it cut immediately on.
So I'm going to move this on. The superintendent has some additional items in her report.
And with all that being said, it does come down to funding, and with flat funding, we were 120 positions from really secretaries in schools, to aides, to teachers, to counselors, security guards, principals, and administration, all adjusted. And there was a comment in regard to administration. It was the deepest change. It was we reduced positions. We also reduced, gave raises by reducing positions. And if we did that, I mean, that is a possibility in giving a raise, but then you would impact even more what folks are saying about class sizes, because that's half of our employees are teachers in the classroom, but make up about, I think about 70% of the funds, so that is the biggest impact in the largest group. So the changes there would impact gratefully. So that I heard from testimony about the youngest teachers, the newest ones, those would be the ones that could possibly not have jobs. And those were the ones that we want to share as innovators and keep our collective group of educators. And the flexibility within exempt people to hire and fire and there's no contract is very different than a contracted negotiated agreement, collective bargaining. So that there is a big difference. Certainly the latter could be done, but I don't think the consequences would be delightful. Similar to, there were some changes made in the schedule that aren't in the middle school schedule we're not happy with, but they were to meet the request for additional time for students to learn and be retaught, also to meet team time, as well as to not affect elective teachers. We wanted to keep elective teachers. So when we work to create what we really ask for, sometimes it isn't what the outcome that we wanted to have happen. So we've heard lots of testimony in regard to that. There wasn't an effort, but middle schools, per the number of teachers or grade levels that they span, actually had the hardest hit last year. That's where the majority of the teachers were, in those 2 grade levels. So middle school is about 2.5 grade levels, if you will. It's 7 and 8, and half of our 6th grade are in middle schools. They had a 30 teacher reduction because of the 12 million. Elementary schools had 40. There's 60 elementary schools. So the impact to each elementary school is a lot smaller than the impact to middle schools. High schools was about 30. Think of all the classes in a high school. There's 4 grade levels. So the reductions at the elementary and high school levels weren't felt as great as middle school. And so we wanted to work with the middle schools, and the testimony was about, I want to keep middle school model team time. We do not want to affect elective teachers. We want to have our elective teachers. We need reteaching time for kids or acceleration time. So when we put those wants and needs together, we come up with a plan that, frankly, it's difficult. It's not the best. It is rushed. It is different. It feels like we're working 100 times faster and harder. But it wasn't meant as a punishment. It was really meant to answer some of the needs that were asked for. There is principals are working with their staffs now to say, let's reevaluate this. What are our priorities now given unintended consequences? And so the unintended consequences in regard to raises is exactly that. The folks that are at the newest people to our profession are always the first to go. It's in a contract. It's how it works. And so I fear that. And those are the real discussions we should be having as well. So when we talk about metrics and ratios, and when we talk about it in Juneau, when we put out a metric and a ratio for staffing, we want people to know it is not a class cap. That when we say we provide 21-to-1 for kindergarten, over half of our kindergarten classes are over 21. And the reason is that it's not a class cap. Most caps are put into place by state governments, and like we don't want a class size over this. Generally what they do is they protect the lower grade levels, but a metric is used to staff a school according to how many kids are in the school, and then within that school, principals use those ratios to receive staffing and then make the determinations in the schools. There's guidance because we do want a framework for the parameters. The staffing for kindergarten is 21-to-1. The staffing for, I believe, probably 5th grade is about 26-to-1. That of and in itself is intuitive that probably 6th grade is going to be higher than kindergarten, but again, over half of our kindergartners are over 21. I would say over half of our 5th grades are over 26. In fact, there's many we had shared here that are 32. We did look at the school at Turnagain, and there were 32 in both the neighborhood side as well as the immersion side, but then there was an alternate class of the grade level below with 21. And so kids come in different, we have bubbles. And so what we allow is within the parameters, the top frames it and says, here's the metric and here's staffing. The middle basically decides what is our staffing, and it's usually based off of where are the kids. We want to keep the younger kids at smaller class sizes as much as possible. What are the student needs, and what are the building strengths? Sometimes you just have, you know, as a teacher and a building administrator, you have some rambunctious grade levels that come through, and you really try to overstaff that group because the kids are so lively. So really it depends on your building's needs. Generally it's a discussion with a leadership team deciding, and counselors, how do we do this? At high school level, it really is in regard to what are student needs and the certifications and the courses that they need to graduate. And so if I have, and there are many classes under 20. A lot of the career technical classes are all under 20, and those are run by industry. So if I have an elective that's under 20, the opposite class of that, I probably have somebody at 40. And a lot of times those 40 are the core teachers for math. You know, I don't know if it's for math, but certainly over 30 for math. We have in PE, we have over 40. Music, sometimes well over 50. So it just depends on the courses, how the structure is of the school, but we allow schools. Now, when the school comes down to where we've done the best we could with staffing and we still have this adjustment, we issued over 10 teachers this year for staffing adjustments because what we call bubbles, where they just couldn't make it work. The kids fell within a certain grade level, and instead of 3 teachers that grade level, they had to have 4. Instead of 2 in elementary, they had 3. And we reviewed that in a list of all the needs from all 60 schools, what they're coming with. And hopefully that working in a school to figure it out, we could just feel confident in working with the kids we have and why. So when staffing is put forth in a budget, please note, and hopefully you can share that in Juneau as well, that when they see a staffing ratio or a class size, that is just to give staff. That certainly is not a cap, and I believe many lawmakers believe it's a cap. Or, well, your classes aren't so bad, you're 26-1. When you're 26-1, the give is on either side of that. And so I just wanted to share with the board, as we talk about staffing, enrollment, class sizes, and the budget, they all are in this mix and they're all intertwined together. And basically though, kids, we receive funds for kids. When kids go away, so do our funding. And 600 kids left us. And that's huge. So with that, if there's any questions, I can share.
I just want to clarify some of the information we received, that if our employees were to receive a 1% increase, the financial impact would be over the life of the contract would be 39.2 million, and with a 2% it would be 56.7 million. So if I were to use that 1 million in per person, which is an average including benefits and the required donations to the state retirement system, that would be about 390 employees or 560 employees.
Over 3 years. In 1 year, it wouldn't be that much.
Right,
Yeah.
I mean over the 3 years. Yes.
And Madam President, the reason being is that our largest employee group, you know,
Of the
I mean, yeah,
89%.
so if it was 10 people or 100 people to affect, it wouldn't be that much, but it's the largest group. So I know the board is working towards really the share of the funds that we have is to be shared by all those units, yeah. But the largest unit is teachers. Mm-hmm. So it should be. I mean, that's the correct way. But yeah, it's money, and even without any changes, flat funding had us reduce already. So therein lies our problem, that we all are in the same room, we have the same problem, we just have to sit in different seats, and so a lot of times we stand where we sit, and it's totally understood, but the effect is indirectly on our teachers, not only salaries and home lives, it would be in jobs because we would lose people. And it would be in class sizes, because if a few of us go, a lot of us have a lot more kids. It's just, that's our where we are. So,
Do you have any, do you have one further piece of yours?
I did. I was requested to talk about assessments. We could put this off if you'd like. So I'm kind of depressed, everybody. Okay. We'll put off assessments, and we had just the state certified graduation rate, if you'd like to see that.
I would like to see that because that's actually good news. State certified graduation rates, yes.
So we like to talk about the big five, and Member Donley mentioned Kenai, and just to keep in mind, Anchorage is the largest school district with approximately 48,000 students. Matsu has approximately 18,500. Fairbanks, 13,000, but soon to be probably 3,000 more with their jets getting up there. Kenai is 8.5 and Juneau's 4.5. So when you look at the effect sizes of those, our effect size is major with having so many kids. If you look at our graduation rate this year, it is the highest we've had. And again, the number of graduates we move forward, I believe, is 3,450 graduates in ASD. And there's about 1,000 in the next closest, which is Matsu. So congrats on that. And
for perspective, am I not accurate that 12 years ago it was 55%?
That is correct, Madam President.
So we've made major gains in 12 years.
And here is, this was done in our classrooms. Kids didn't do it alone. Student group comparisons, and this is especially, we would like to note that the schools really worked diligently in looking at, well, who are our kids who are struggling, and they really addressed the concerns. And I just wanted to share not only a percent increase, but the number of kids really, you know, when you look at that, and 52 more kids graduated than in the past, and that's 2 full classrooms that we're sending away. And it may not seem significant, 1.5%, but certainly every kid that leaves us with a diploma has hope for a future, and I think brings hope to our community. Everything that's in our community is about, you know, as of late anyway, on the news, is of violence or burglary, crime. When we give students a diploma to have a future, to move on, we give them a life. Every day, teachers in classrooms are giving kids a new life. But if you look African American, it is those increases. You can look at the percent of the increase and really what they look like in numbers of kids. So really they're not even whole class sizes, I guess, because we have such large class sizes, but they're students, and we wanted that to be noted, that many more kids are successful. And generally kids who don't make it in 4 years don't stick around, so they leave us. The comparisons for attendance, we wanted to share this because we are always curious about how we take attendance. Our goal was 90%, has to get 90% attendance, and we would struggle to meet that. But really, our overall attendance rate is 93. We want to hit 95. That's what the state asks us to hit on testing day anyway. That's the only day that they do that. They counted how many kids took the test and are enrolled. But we're really looking at chronic absences. So we don't have necessarily an absentee problem. We have a chronic absentee problem. And so we wanted to stress that we're not doing too poorly when you look at our dashboard. So we're looking at a new way to capture the data for the dashboard. It was correct in the question we answered, but I think we need to just ask a different question. And to that end, I wanted to share that United Way, in conjunction with BP as well, just gave a donation of $12,600 for, if kids are in school for 2 weeks straight, 10 days, their name gets put in an electronic drawing and they could win $100. It is high school kids. It's kind of just a fun way of intermittent reward. It's the theory behind hunting and fishing, that if I go out and have fun and I can do it, I might not get a moose this week or this September, but if I keep going, I'm going to get one at some time. So intermittent reward, we had a special education teacher very eloquently testify tonight, and it's used quite a bit in education, intermittent rewards. We all like intermittent rewards. So we're using those funds to hopefully get the folks that aren't here to school. So attendance rate, just wanted to say that it isn't really too terrible and that we do have a new program. And with that, I hope you share in the success. And I did email teachers with a thank you because the work is duly noted. And Madam President, that concludes the superintendent report unless there's additional information that you'd like, and I can touch base on the assessments at our next meeting.
I'm going to give an opportunity for our 2 board members online if they have any questions. And while I'm waiting for them to unmute, do any other board members have questions for the superintendent? Mr. Holleman or Ms. Snelling?
I'm fine.
Okay. We moved.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent.
Our Student Advisory Board representative, is there anyone else from SAB in the audience to give that report? Hearing none, we move to board conference and committee reports. Since you already began, in a sense, part of your communications committee report, is there anything else you want to add and when the next meeting is? Mr. Donley.
We are, the 4th special session started today. We're still trying to identify a time when they might be back in town so that we can have a meeting with the Anchorage caucus, legislative caucus. We did meet on the 10th of this month. Our next meeting will be on the 14th of November from 11 to 12 here in room 150. We are going to be continuing to work on our project of updating the flyers for the board members and for the school district folks to be able to use with community councils and PTAs. Thank you for your assistance developing legislative priorities. I think we're making really good progress there. I'm liking the way it's coming together. I think it's going to be a better product than last year.
Hey, I gave my 2 cents.
Thank you very much, yes. And you noticed that my last draft incorporated, yes, some of your comments. So thank you very much.
Okay, and governance, Ms. Plunkett.
We're conquering the policy section 5000, which is students. We had our first meeting on October 11th. We'll have our next meeting tomorrow, October 24th, from 3 to 5 to finish out the student policy section. In November, we have 2 meetings set for the section 3000 and 7000, which is November 1st and November 14th. And it's all in room 150 from 3 to 5.
Thank you. And Ms. Snelling, your Finance Committee report.
The Finance Committee, we have not met since our last meeting. The date of our next meeting is going to be November the 6th from 2:30 to 3:30, just prior to our next board meeting.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our committee reports. We do have a conference report. However, Mr. Holleman, unless you are prepared to give it online right now, I'd like to postpone that until our next board meeting.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, and the same with Ms. Snelling?
Yes, I agree. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll expect 2 board reports on the Council of Great City Schools conference that was held last week at our next board meeting. Okay, we move to our consent agenda. And I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I move to approve the consent agenda, ASD Memorandum 049 Personnel Report.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will board members please proceed to vote? Is it not? Oh, voice vote.
Yes.
Mr. Holleman, voice vote? Or are you doing it online? Are you on board docs right now? He's online. You're online? And Ms. Snelling, are you online with board docs? Okay. I don't have a voting window. Yay. And the motion carries 6 yea, 0 nay, and 1 not present at vote. Okay, and we move to action items. Ms. Vice President?
I move to approve the expulsion of the student associated with ASD incident 1238186 as discussed in executive session.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, all board members, please proceed to vote.
I vote yes.
I'm going to have to restart because I don't have a voting window. My vote is yes. And the motion carries 6 yea, 0 nay, and 1 not present at vote. At this point on our action items, I do want to clarify the procedures as we move forward. An action item is first introduced by the Vice President, and if seconded by another board member, I'll open the floor for public testimony. If you signed up in advance or indicate you're interested in providing testimony, I will call you to come to the front table to speak. You have 3 minutes to talk, and you will see a timer on the screen to your left to monitor the time remaining and inform you when you need to conclude. After all testimony closes, I will open the floor for board discussion, normally followed by our student board representative vote, but we'll be jumping over that step today, and then finally calling for the official vote. And again, the voting results will be displayed on the screen. So, Ms. Marsett.
I move to approve ASD memorandum number 047 and adopt the attached resolution in support of November 2017 being Alaska Native and American Indian Heritage Month.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'll open this up for public testimony. Seeing no one wishing to speak, closing public testimony and opening for board discussion. Closing board discussion. Please vote.
Yes.
I restarted and I still don't have it. Yes. Yes, I did. The motion carries 6 yea, 0 nay, and 1 not present at vote.
I move to approve ASD memorandum number 064 to propose an increase in the number of delegates that the Anchorage School District ASD is allotted from 5 to 7 at the AASB annual meeting in November 2017.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, opening for public testimony. See none, public testimony is closed. Board discussion is open. Ms. Marsett, Ms. Plunkett, excuse me.
I have reviewed and done quite a bit of thinking of that, and looking at the number of delegates that there are within AASB, I don't see that going from 5 to 7 accomplishes anything, and could end up hurting us, especially when we look at the amount of money that we put into that they could look for an increase. Well, I mean, I'm being serious. And the fact that we're working on the putting forward our policies into the ASB, I don't see that it adds any value. And I'm not going to vote for it at this point.
Mr. Donley.
I think this change is long overdue. The board members are familiar with the statistics on this. I mean, the comparative voting powers set out in the resolution, it's pretty astounding how undervalued our students are as far as voting power in this group. this would tweak it just a little bit and at least have the same number of delegates also as we have board members. I just think this is long overdue and a very incredibly reasonable modification. I mean, even with this modification, the next largest district has twice the voting power we have per capita for our students.
Any other discussion? I want to give an opportunity for Mr. Holleman or Ms. Snelling online. Hearing none, I'm closing board discussion. Please vote.
Yes.
And the motion carries 4 yea, 2 nay, and 1 not present at vote.
I move to approve ASD Memorandum Number 066 and adopt the attached resolution designating October as Principal Appreciation Month, go Principals, in the Anchorage School District.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We open this up for public testimony. Closing public testimony. Board discussion is now open. Closing board discussion. Please vote.
Yes.
And the motion carries 6 yea, 0 nay, and 1 not present at vote.
I move to approve ASD Memorandum Number 031 and authorize the superintendent to accept reimbursement funds from the State of Alaska Office of Children's Services, OCS, in the estimated amount not to exceed $150,000 for coordinating and transporting students in foster care to their school of origin.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Public testimony is open. Closing public testimony. Board discussion is open. Closing board discussion. Members, please vote.
Yes.
And the motion carries 6 yea, 0 nay, and 1 not present at vote.
I move to approve ASD Memorandum Number 055 and authorize the superintendent to accept the title 6-B Individuals with Disabilities Education Act Entitlement Grant and Preschool Disabled Incentive Grant for FY 2017-18. The total amount for the two grants is $13,274,151.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Public testimony is now open. Closing public testimony. Board discussion is open. Board discussion is closed. Please vote.
Yes.
Motion carries 6 yea, 0 nay, and 1 not present at vote.
I move to approve ASD Memorandum Number 056 and authorize the superintendent to accept grants for Providence Heights Alaska School for the Deaf, AKSD, Deaf Educational Interpreters, and the Alaska Family Directory website from the Alaska Department of Education and Early Development deed. The total amount of these grants is $558,000.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Open public testimony. Closing public testimony. Board discussion is open. Closing board discussion. Please vote.
Yes.
And the motion carries 6 yea, 0 nay, and 1 not present at vote.
I move to approve ASD Memorandum Number 053 and adopt the tentative agreement between the district and the Public Employees Local 71, AFL-CIO, which will establish terms and conditions of employment for individuals in this unit during the period between July 1, 2017 and June 30th, 2020.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Opening for public comment, public testimony. Public testimony is now closed. Board discussion is open. Closing board discussion. Please vote.
Yes.
And the motion carries 6 yea, 0 nay, and 1 not present at vote. We now move to the non-action items on our agenda. Are there any of these that board members would like to pull for discussion? Also want to give an opportunity for board members online. Okay, then we move to future items, future business. Are there any items that board members wish to have considered for agendaing? Agendaing, is that a verb? For putting on the agenda. Making up my own agendaize. I'm going to make up my own word. Okay, we now move to public testimony, our second opportunity on non-agenda and non-action items. Again, I think people know the procedure, but we do have a table set up with microphones, and you are allowed 3 minutes to speak, and you will see a timer on the screen, and when you reach the end of your 3 minutes, could you kindly conclude? Is there anybody in the audience? I don't have anybody on a sign-up sheet, do I? No. Is there anyone in the audience who did not sign up who wishes to speak? Last chance. Okay, then we move on in our agenda to school board and administration comments or communication. Ms. Marsett, quelle surprise.
Imagine I want to say something. Two things. One, I went out and visited with one of my schools, and we talked about ways of getting money besides robbing a bank, and or putting teachers out on the street corner with 10 cups. So you laugh, you should laugh. Anyway, one of the things that I talked to Dr. Bishop about is, do we have any grant writers? And so one of the suggestions is if, not small grants, but if there was a big grant, say like at our STEM school, there might be a $50,000 grant out there. If they were interested in, maybe they could contact Tom. Is it Tom? Jim, sorry, Jim. I'm looking at Jim. Jim, and that grant writer might be able to help that school to write that grant. So, you know, I always believe where there's a will, there's a way, and that you can think outside the box is what I hope we can do. The other thing I want to say, and I feel pretty strong about this, is I've been involved in the school district for a long time, advocating for my son who has special needs, and just advocating for children in general. And one of the things I follow very closely is our achievement gap, because what we don't have is time. Every year that our children don't achieve or can't read is another year that we failed them. And I'm talking all of us. All of us have failed those students. You know, if their families aren't involved, whoever, the community, whatever, we've all failed them. And I've gone back, even when I wasn't part of the school board, and I've looked at the plans for the achievement gap and how the school district has handled that. And what I've always seen is the same old thing. And I know teachers always do something different within their classrooms, but all I saw was the same old plan every year. Maybe phase 5, phase 6, whatever. But for the first time And maybe it wasn't rolled out right. I'll admit to that. You know, maybe there were some flaws. But for the first time, I'm seeing something different in our school district. And change is not easy. Different is not easy. But what I'd say is I have hope because I'm seeing something different. And I'm hoping that as teachers, as staff members, as everyone else, that you will give this a chance and have the same hope that I have that our students won't go another year of being a statistic because they don't have time. We have to get them there, and it's through us that they're going to do it. So it's just something I wanted to say, something I feel very strongly about. Nothing's perfect and never will be, but you know, as individuals, I talk about grit and reliance and determination, and that's what we need. So I appreciate everything you do, and I can't say much more except that, you know, we're all in this together. Thank you.
Dr. Bishop.
Thank you, Member Marsett. Mine isn't as heartfelt, but I did want to mention that we had a couple of high schools, and I know it's just in sport, but the demonstration of community and kid engagement and play between West High School and Bartlett was phenomenal Friday night. So our city of, you know, like I said, we hear bad things happening around us and with crime and whatnot, but we had thousands of people in the stands enjoying sport of high school kids that, like really a game of where they hit each other, which we don't allow anywhere else, but they like hit so hard, and a Bartlett person who just knocked somebody on the ground, reaching down, picking them up, starting over and play. It was such a great game. The boys, girls on the field and in the stands. I just want to say I was so impressed, and it wasn't just those two schools. You know, we had principals and assistant principals and teachers from Service High. I talked to a Service High teacher who was out there just to help to make sure things were going okay, and just to have people give up their time to make it a nice event, because there were thousands of people and lots of emotion, but it was fantastic. So folks in ASD, they really have come together, and it was amazing. The sportsmanship displayed by the kids as well as the adults, and the togetherness really of the district. It was really super, and plus a great game, but it was really great seeing the sportsmanship and just the love of getting to do fun stuff. So thank you. I just want to say thanks to everybody for that.
And I want to follow that up with a special shout out to a number of the French teachers in our high schools. I was invited to a French camp that was held at Birchwood for ASD high school, French students of all levels. And they had participation from Chugiak, Eagle River, West Diamond, and Bartlett. And the dedication of the teachers in providing this wonderful learning experience for students was phenomenal. It's a true indication of their love of the French language and the Francophone culture that they were donating their time and talent from a Friday afternoon to a Saturday afternoon to offer this experience. And I do, having been in the teaching force, I know firsthand how hard our teachers work. And I do truly appreciate those who go out of their way at the expense of their own families and their own personal lives in order to offer these experiences. And I wanted to give a shout out to those teachers. Also, I had a wonderful visit at 3 of my assigned elementary schools this year, Chester Valley, Creekside, and Wonder Park, and watched some phenomenal teaching going on. I was knocked out of my chair with shock with what I observed some of those first graders could do using the new Cengage language arts curriculum. It really blew my mind. Additionally, spent some time at Bettye Middle School talking with staff on last Friday on the in-service day, and appreciated the feedback that was given to me, and plan to do the same at Bartlett this Friday. So lots of good information being passed on to board in many ways, and lots of great things happening for our students. And I have a notice that Mr. Holleman would like to speak. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And from past experience, I know when someone's commenting like this over the phone, a lot of times it sounds like it's coming from outer space. But a couple of things from watching the meeting tonight and from the testimony from people that came, and having been part of the district for 20 years and kind of ridden this roller coaster where you have difficult times, we have some good times financially. I think in the past, when we've had a couple of difficult years, something happened, and we always wound up having some years where we got some funding that let us gain some ground back as a district, not necessarily as educators. I don't necessarily see that on the horizon, and I think at the moment we need to contemplate what happens if we are looking at flat funding for, say, another 2 or 3 or 4 years. We really don't have any assurance that legislators are going to find their way through this. We're down to our last year of savings as a state to be able to maintain what we're doing now, and I'm not sure, quite frankly, that they have the ability to make a way forward in the best interest of the state. If we go forward like this, are we simply going to cut a few more people out of the teaching force, or a chunk of people out of the teaching force, and a few more office people, and one more administrator, and then go forward again? Because I think that's what a lot of classroom teachers see us doing, is the same solution. That's a short-term solution, but it's not a long-term solution. And I'm starting to picture a district that has a pretty efficient bus system and a pretty efficient food service program, and curriculum people choosing curriculum and handing it off to classrooms that have 50 or 60 kids in them. This has happened in other states. It happened in Oregon before they finally turned it around and realized what they were doing to their schools. If we get to that point, we will lose an awful lot of people that will never come back. It's, along with every other thing that's happening, it is a reality that Alaska has the worst retirement program for Tier 3 people of any state in the country. Actually, of any major enterprise in the country. We can go into details later, but if you rank them, we're going to be at the very bottom, and we're going to be trying to hire people out of the lower 48. So I do think we need to, like everybody else, I think I'm caught up in this on a year-to-year basis. We need to think about what we're going to do if this persists 3 or 4 years down the road. Because unless something dramatic happens at the state level, potentially this is what we're looking at. And it's, I'll admit I don't have a solution, but we've got to realize we've got to paint a picture that will give to kids and give to the public the very best things that they care about in education. And I'm not sure our year-to-year adjustments necessarily keep our eyes on the horizon of what those critical things are. Thank you.
Are there any board members wish to add? Hearing none, then I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Is there any objection? We are adjourned.